NFL Week 11 best bets are here. If you're new to the channel, we're doing 2 spreads, 2 over-unders, and 2 player props coming your guys' way. So subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. We're trying to hit 14,000 subscribers this weekend. We can't do it without your guys' support. Drop a like on the video. It only takes a couple seconds, but let's get into it. Let's waste no more time. Now, last week we were 6-7 overall, down a little bit less than 2 units, which honestly, going 0-3 on spreads isn't good. It's going to be hard to find a way to be profitable, and that's kind of what did us in last weekend. Now let's put that in the past. Let's push that forward, and let's keep moving forward. Still Week 11 in the NFL, a lot of good matchups going on. So we're going to start with a good one. Well, probably not a great one. We're talking about the Browns, minus 11.5, taking on the Lions. Now, the Browns, they might be the most inconsistent team in the NFL. And, one week they're beating the Bengals 41-16. The next week they're losing the Patriots 45-7. And that usually leads to me being flip-flop on our podcast, which we post every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Definitely you should check it out. But it's not only me saying praising the Browns one week, then they get blown out. I trash them the next. And I'm going to get ahead of the curve because I trashed them this week. I'm going to get ahead of the curve and take their spread this week. And here's why. Now, everyone's going to want to bet the Lions. You saw them last weekend. They looked good. Good is a relative term. They did not pass the ball more than 12 times. But Jared Goff, they didn't put the ball in his hands. DeAndre Swift, 33 carries. But I'd argue, and they tied against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They had so many opportunities to win that game, yet they still tied. And I think that would be a little bit more demoralizing than actually losing outright. Now, the Lions, just like the Browns, are probably very inconsistent. They're one of the most inconsistent teams, but what they are consistent at is losing. Like I said, they have not won a single game this season. And the bigger part, they have not covered 2 weeks in a row. Never. In this whole season, through 10 weeks, they have not covered 2 weeks in a row. And here's the amount of points they have lost the week after covering. So obviously they covered last weekend against the Steelers as they were 6.5 to 9.5 point underdogs. They don't really know where the line finished at as Big Ben was ruled out on Saturday. Now, the week after covering, week 2, they lost by 18. Week 4, they lost by 10. Week 6, they lost by 23. And week 8, they lost by 38 points. Then you throw in a bye week in there now. Now, last week they obviously covered, and then the next week they just take the week off. It's like they use all their energy up for 1 week, then the next week they lose all their energy. I think maybe they'll get their first win on Thanksgiving, but on Sunday in week 11, got the Browns. I think they dominated them in a big comeback victory because they looked terrible on last weekend in week 10 against the Patriots. I think they come out, it's a get-right game for Cleveland. We saw it work last weekend for the Bills and the Cowboys, both in big victories. I think we see that same thing, same kind of narrative with the Browns this weekend. So I'll ride with them. Now moving on to another spread pick, taking the Vikings plus 2.5 versus the Packers. This line's been moving around from 1.5 to 2, 2.5, 3, and kind of coming back down. It's another one of those lines that makes no sense. Now you look at the Packers, I could see everyone and their mother going to bet them. They look like the easy sucker bet that you can bet on Sunday, and I would not be surprised to see them have 75, 80, 90% of bets, and that's never the side you want to be on, in my opinion. Now, you have it, and you saw that last week. A lot of people bet the Titans. Well, in the same sort of spread, Saints ended up backdooring and covering. And I think that you look at the Vikings, they got a chance to win this outright. But let's talk about it. Packers 8-2, number 1 seed in the East in the NFC. Now you got the Vikings, they're 4-5. They need a win here badly. But the difference between these two teams, which I honestly don't think there's a huge difference besides Aaron Rodgers versus Kirk Cousins. But you never know with Kirk Cousins. He's kind of a wild card. Some games he plays really great. Some games he looks terrible. And man, I'm hoping we get a good game, and I think we will get that one. Now, I think both teams have good running games, good wide receivers, and I think the Vikings got a chance in this one. Now, the Packers, they're 9-0 against the spread in their last 9 games. And taking them, like I said, in this spot feels like a no-brainer. But you look at it last week, they could have lost that game. The Seahawks had plenty of chances to win outright, but they didn't put up a single point. They could not get anything done. Russell Wilson showed a lot of rust, and that didn't surprise me necessarily too much. Now, the Vikings team, like I said, can run the ball. They have Dalvin Cook, and they have 2 elite wide receivers, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. Not to mention they're playing at home today on Sunday in front of their home crowd. The Cheeseheads, they're going to travel. They always do, and that's respect to their fans, Packers fan base. But last time these two teams played, last November, Vikings won that one outright behind 160 yards and 3 touchdowns from Dalvin Cook. Wouldn't be surprised to see a similar kind of game plan, just force feed Dalvin Cook the ball, and he just controlled the clock against his team. Very similar to what the Washington football team did to beat the Bucs last weekend. They just controlled the clock the whole fourth quarter, and they won that outright. So I'll take the Vikings plus the points in this one, and I think they might squeak this one outright. Now, moving on to another one, some over-unders. We're taking the Washington football team and the Carolina Panthers. We're taking the under, 43.5 points. minus 110 on BetMGM. Now, let's start with the Washington football team in this matchup. Now, their defense, like we just talked about, played very well last weekend against the Bucs, holding them to just 19 points, and their offense played pretty decently, controlling the clock, running the ball, and they did all the damage on the ground, which is honestly music to a under bettors' ears. You want to see long drives that hopefully don't result in any points, but if they do, maybe a field goal and a touchdown if you have to do it. But now you take on the Panthers, who will likely be starting Cam Newton, which you love to see it. You love the story, but Cam Newton is who he is, been the last couple seasons. Now, sure, he looked decent last week, but they gave the ball where he is elite, which is at the goal line, which is throwing either 1-yard passes or just running the ball in. That's what he's elite at. Everyone knows that's what Cam Newton can do. Problem is, I don't think you aren't just going to start on the goal line every single drive. You're going to have to lead and sustain drives, and I think that's going to be tough for Cam Newton to do. Now, you look at it, unfortunately, the Washington football defense was looking really good last weekend. I think they still look good this weekend. They continue to improve. Unfortunately, Chase Young, their star defensive end, will be out this game. He tore his ACL out for the season, so get well soon. But you know Cam Newton, he's an inconsistent, inaccurate QB, and I think he'll have trouble sustaining drives. And also, you look at Ron Rivera, the coach of the Washington football team. If anyone's going to know Cam Newton better than Cam Newton knows himself, it's going to be Ron Rivera, who was a coach who coached him pretty much his whole career with the Carolina Panthers. Him and Cam Newton were tandem throughout those years, so I think he'll look for ways to make Cam Newton uncomfortable if Cam Newton does start out there. We also haven't even talked about the Panthers defense, one of the best in the league, and I think they'll be able to control that Washington football team offense, put them in some bad spots, force Taylor Heineke into some third and long, a lot of punts, and I'm taking the under, 43.5 points. I'm moving on to another over-under. New York Jets. We're taking the Jets Dolphins under 45 points, minus 110 on BetMGM. I don't really know where the points are coming for in this matchup. Now, I understand why the over-under is set up so high, and we'll talk about it in a second, but these two teams have gone under this line 5 straight times. Now the Jets are starting Joe Flacco. I mean, where are the points coming from? Even if the Jets get blitzed, which literally they will get blitzed because the Dolphins blitz a ton, I don't see them scoring a ton of points. The Jets offense is it's pretty lackluster, and the Jets defense has been spotty this season. I won't lie to you. It's not great statistically, but some games they show up, some games they don't. And then you look at both teams. They're 28th and 27th in terms of points per game scored. Yeah, they're scoring a little bit over 17 points per game a pop. And now their defensive numbers are why this over-under is not 38.5. Because if their defenses were middle of the pack, yeah, this over-under would be around 38.5, but their defenses are both near the bottom of the league. But look at the Dolphins' defense, playing pretty solid the past 3 weeks. They held the Bills in check for 3 quarters before they kind of scored 2 touchdowns in that fourth to score 26 total points, but held the Texans to 9 points the next week, the Ravens to just 10 points on Thursday Night Football last weekend. Now, the Jets defense has sucked. They have not been good. They've allowed 31-plus points in 4 straight games, including 45 alone to 3 of their last 4 matchups. Now, if they give up 45 today, we're screwed. But I don't think they're going to do that because the way you beat this Jets defense, you run the football. And you know what the Dolphins are incapable of? Running the football. Their offensive line is terrible, and I think the Jets defense, Robert Saleh, they've been trashed by Rex Ryan over the last week. I think they show up and they have to show out today. Their defense has been horrendous, but so has the Dolphins' offensive line. I think the Jets' defense shows up a little bit. Dolphins will look pretty decent on defense as well. I think we get into good old-fashioned pillow fight, so I'll be taking the under 45 points in this one. I don't think it should be this high. Now let's move on to 2-player props before we get out of here. Talk about CD Lamb, over 72.5 receiving yards, minus 115 on DraftKings. Now, the Chiefs versus Cowboys, one of the marquee matchups of Sunday night of Sunday football. I believe it's the 4:25, probably primetime game. And this game has the highest over-under on the slate. I believe 56 points. And while I'm not touching that over-under, I think it might play into our hand for CD Lamb. Now, Lamb's coming off a 6-catch, 94 receiving yard performance, 2 touchdowns, and he finally got to return to the position that the Cowboys want to put him in. And that would be as a slot receiver. Now, Michael Gallup finally returned from injury, has not played since week 1, and Lamb took full advantage of returning to the slot, which is where the Cowboys want him at. Now, he ran over 60% of his routes in the slot. It's where he did the majority of his damage in that game against the Falcons. Compared to before Michael Gallup wasn't there, he's only running like less than 20% of his snaps in the slot. Now, the only other game, like I said, Gallup was active, was week 1. CD Lamb, 104 yards against the Buccaneers. Now, CD Lamb, he's hit this over in 6 of 9 games so far this season. And what is expected to be a high-scoring game, expect him to hit it in 7 of 9. The Chiefs' defense, it doesn't scare you one bit. I mean, they had a decent week against the Raiders, but that's the Oakland Raiders we're talking, or the Las Vegas Raiders, my bad. But still, I like the Cowboys to continue to, and I look at the Chiefs, they're probably going to try to stop the run because that's kind of how the Cowboys offense gets going, get that run game, some play action pass. I think CD Lamb due for a big day, maybe even 100-plus receiving yards. Just maybe worth a sprinkle. So I'll move on to my final player prop of today's video. We'll obviously have some more in Saturday night's video with parlays and player props posted every Saturday night. David Montgomery, I'm taking his over 14.5 yards for his longest rush. Now, that's not his rushing yards total, but his rushing yards total is around 60-something. But over 14.5, so he needs a 15-yard or longer run, and we catch this bet. Now, David Montgomery returned 2 weeks ago. A lot of people didn't know what to expect. They were like, hell, he's coming back from an injury a week before a bye. What are they going to do with him? Well, it's the Bears. They gave him the ball 13 times. He ran for 63 yards, and that included his 21-yard long rush against the Steelers. And he looked back, and now he's got a bye week under his belt, and the Bears will be back and eager to run the football again like they have been doing all season long. Now, Montgomery, he's hit this over in 4 of 5 games so far this season. There's only one that he missed. I believe he had an 11-yard run. And you look at the Ravens, their defense has not been something that's been scared of. Their linebackers really struggling, and over their last 5 games for the Ravens, they've allowed 5 running backs to hit this over, and 3 teams in general have hit this over. Now, the 2 teams that haven't hit the over in terms of having a long rush, now, these 2 teams have had some wide receivers hit this over, but we're not going to consider David Montgomery is not a wide receiver. The 2 teams that didn't, you got the Dolphins, shouldn't surprise you one bit. They can't run the ball, and I would be surprised if they can get a 15-yard or longer run. They just don't do that. And the other team was the Chargers, who could not get anything going against the Ravens. That game that they played a couple weeks back, maybe like week 6 or 7, they just couldn't get anything going. They ran it 10 times all game for 14 yards. Yeah, that's not going to get the ball done. But the Bears, they want to run the football, and they want to get Justin Fields acclimated, get him more comfortable, and it starts with getting the linebackers to creep up, get him some open lanes behind them, kind of stretching the top off the defense. So I'll continue to ride with Montgomery. Like I said, he's had a 15-yard rush in 4 or 5 games this season, and last season he ended and having a 15-yard rush in 4 of his final 6 games. I think he has a good chance of getting it done again today. So I'll ride with David Montgomery in Sunday's showdown. Now that'll wrap it up. Like I said, Saturday night, we'll have some more parlays and player props. So turn on those notifications on the channel. Subscribe if you guys are new, because we're 7-1 on player props in that video alone the last 2 weeks. So we've been on a tear. Stay out of trouble this weekend. We're going to make some money. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.